Right, it is, what is it, the 15th of March. It's been mild. I took the decision to take all the canopies down and anything that needed protection, just due to the fact that we know we haven't had a frost for weeks. The next 2 weeks are looking sort of lowest about 5 degrees at night, double digits during the day. I know we're not out of the danger zone yet, but frosts this time of year don't tend to be as harsh as like the deep frost we had in a couple of cold spells where you'll get nights and nights on, you know, minus temperatures. That's, if we get any frost, it's going to be light. So with that in mind, yeah, like I say, I took the decision to take down all the canopies now. I've got fleece bags handy, so if the worst happens and things drastically change and we do get a frost, then I can, if I wish, throw some fleece bags over stuff. So this video is going to be about some of the palms I planted last year, which were going to be a question mark on them. I know it's a bit windy, but it is very mild. First t-shirt day of the year. Very nice, about 16-17 degrees. The sun has been out, it's coming and going. Alright, so let's get back to the point. So last year I planted out in the ground a lot of palms, which people say don't bother, not going to work. You either get the comment, waste of time, you'll lose more fronds than you'll gain, this, that and the other, which, you know, may be the case, but still very negative. So I always look on the positive side, and I like to grow and push the limits, zone push if you like. And you know, everyone's microclimates are different, you just don't know from one place to the next. Right, so I am on the east coast here, it's coastal Suffolk, so we're fairly mild. Right, so let's get to the point. We're going to look at the palms, and we'll probably go in order of worst to best, which happens to be, works quite nicely from going round the garden clockwise. So we're just looking at the palms with the question mark, or probably not suitable for UK, rather than the standard palms we know are going to survive. Right, so the very first one, and this was always going to be a bit of a push, even a mild winter. We've got the Kenta palm, which is a common house plant. I don't mind experimenting when I've got multiples of one plant, or you know, I get a good deal and get them cheap. This happened to be in a pot I bought, believe it or not, about 5 years ago, and I bought it 49p. It had 5 palms in it. I separated them all off. So I worked at a 10p a palm basically. So I'm not losing any money, I'm gaining a bit of experience, so it's not a total loss. I always look at it as a positive. We're gaining experience rather than losing a palm. This cost me nothing basically, and you know, I have been hardening it off over the last few years, just keeping it in the shed or the summer house unheated, and always been absolutely fine. Obviously doesn't like the frost, so it's always been kept frost free, but this is in a frost now, and as we can see, all burnt up. So we can pretty much say that's dead, but there is green around the trunk area, so I'm not going to dig it out yet, and we'll see. I know it's not going to be a palm to, you don't want a palm that's going to be dead half the year and then you get one frond regrow and then it dies off in winter. This is not what we want. So in reality, unless you're in a real mild part of the UK where you don't really get frosts, not really an option. So it may survive, it may not, but it's not going to be one that thrives. So we'll see. If it makes a comeback, I might leave it. If not, I might just dig that out if it dies off totally. So like I say, not a fail, it's a learning curve, and we've learnt a lesson there. Right, so the next one, which is not looking good, is a knee cow palm. Again, brought this one last year. I've had them in the past. As long as they're kept frost free, they're flawless. This one was brought, probably never seen a frost. It did have a overhead protection and some fleece wrapped around it, and yet pretty much all the fronds are burnt off. So yeah, even though it doesn't look good, I do have good hope that this will come back, and I'll just protect it a little bit better next year. I'll probably enclose it in, box it in with something, and make sure it just stays frost free, because again, it's a slow growing palm. We don't want this to lose all its fronds and then, you know, spend all summer waiting for a new frond to come out. That's not what it's about. We want something that looks good throughout the season. So in closer inspection, yes, the tips, the fronds are burnt up, but there's green in the petioles and a little bit in the fronds themselves. The centre spear actually looks really good, so that will make a comeback. That's not dead, but it's just fried. So again, we'll be protecting that a bit better next year, so we don't get the same situation again. Washingtonia chinensis. So this is again one I've had for a few years in a pot, and it's always been kept just frost free. It's always seen long cold winters, but just frost free. So this is the first time it's been out in the garden, in the ground, all winter long. And yes, we've got some damage. A lot of the older fronds were already slightly brown from the last winter when it got damp in the polytunnel. But we can see most of the newer fronds are still good, and definitely the centre spears, if we can find, still looking really good. So this will just need a trim up, and that'll pump out a couple of fronds. I mean, the beauty of this is there's actually 4 palms in a clump here, so if that's just one palm and you probably had 2 leaves on one palm, it wouldn't look too good. But because we've got a clump of 4, that's sort of just looks at a bit, makes it look a bit fuller, if you like. So again, this is going to be, you really want a fairly mild area for this, and it will need protection to keep it looking good. Probably would survive without protection, but it just wouldn't look good. So with all these damaged palms, what we're looking at is, we're not going to cut them back yet, even though the temptation is to cut them back, make them look nice, just so we've got nice new leaves on them. But in reality, is if we still get a frost, there's no point cutting back, and that cut point gets frosted and damages it more. So we'll leave the old foliage on until mid to late April, when we're definitely out of the frost zone, and then we'll give everything a good trim back and make it look a bit better. Right, so they were the 3 main ones, which, you know, not really guaranteed to be hardy, but thought we might have a chance. So at the minute, I'm saying probably the Kenta is dead, but these 2 definitely alive. Right, tucked behind the cord line here, got a dwarf sugar palm, or Oranga angleri, and this is again a really slow growing palm, but it is got a bit of hardiness to it. So we're talking possibly down to -6. We can see there's damage on it. We've got 2, or we've got a nice frond there, and the biggest frond is damaged. That is more to do with sunburn last year than it was to do with winter. But we can see there's still, where there's green, there's plenty of green, and we've got a good spear coming out there. So from winter itself, probably the worst damage was the wind, because I had a little pop-up greenhouse over this and it kept blowing about, so sort of shredded the finer tips of the leaves a little bit. But I would say through cold, pretty much untouched. So it is a pretty hardy palm, and hopefully it'll kick out a couple of fronds this year and look a bit better. Right, I will include this. I've done this in a couple of videos already this year, but I will include it anyway because it's newly planted last year. So this is the hardy parlour palm, Codor radicalis, and this is a clump that someone very kindly gave me last year, and really untouched. It is in the best microclimate in the garden, to be fair. So it gets sun in winter, shade in summer, and it's got an overhead canopy, but really no damage at all from winter on that one. So very pleased with that. So we come to this one, which is the Codor microspadix. Again, already mentioned it a couple of times in the videos this year, but again, this was planted last year, so I thought I'd better do an update. And in fairness, looking pretty good. Minor spotting on the leaves. The oldest frond was already spotted from the year before in the greenhouse, but this year minimal damage. Very tiny brown spot on some of the newer leaves. And the nice thing to see is there's a little, don't know if we can see it, I can't see my viewfinder, but we've got a little one popping out the side because they are a sort of clustering palm. So in a few years, hopefully that'll be a nice little clump there under the canopy of the Canariensis. Right, so before we finish up on these new plantings, we'll just go with the Washingtonia, because that's another sort of cold sensitive palm, which is, for me, it's been in the ground several years and it's always survived, but it's never looked brilliant after winter. And last year it totally defoliated, and this year I've only just untied it. So again, we've got a lot of the old fronds are going to be brown, we know that, but to be fair, a lot of the newer leaves, I won't say untouched because there's a slight brown edging on some of them, but nice and green. So that's going to give that a good head start this year, so it's not starting from scratch like it did last year. So hopefully we'll get a bit of regrowth on that and put on some size on the trunks this year if we get a decent summer. So again, with the brown tips, I will cut these back just to leave the green, and I'll cut off any old fronds, but again, not until another month or so when we're out of the frost danger zone. Right, so this is sort of the last new plantings from last year. So we've got 4 palms here, little island in front of the pond, or behind the pond should I say. Big fat frog sitting there croaking. Alright, so the big one in the centre, this is the queen palm, mountain form, so it's hardier than the standard green form. So yeah, this is one I was more concerned about than any, and this is probably done better than most of the other sort of question mark palms. So it's really, it's taken no damage. I mean, the older fronds already look like that. The new frond that opened up last year, it's looking a little bit yellowy, but that's not surprising. But it's not actually damaged, there's no spotting on it. So for me, that's a lot harder than I was expecting. I know we had a mild winter, we did get a week of sort of -3s and 4s, so it's seen some cold, and to be fair, looking better than I thought it would, so very pleased with that. The only damage I can see on that is, again, wind damage from where the wind's been maybe knocking against the fence and sort of browned off some of the tips. Very pleased. So So we've got a small Sable minor here. This is grown from a seedling, probably a couple of years old. Just put that in the ground. The two newest leaves untouched. The three older ones, slight brown spotting, but yeah, they are tough palms. Right, so the one centre middle here, that's the saw palmetto, silver saw palmetto. Even though it doesn't look very silver, it's sort of green, but Serenera whippings. This is one I've had a few years and very, very slow. I mean, we talk about slow palms. This is, for me, one of the slowest. But yes, some of the older fronds are slightly yellowing, but the newer fronds, which are green, have remained green and have took no damage over winter, so they're pretty tough, just very, very slow. But that's quite a nice little sort of clustering palm, which in time might bush out a bit, hopefully, if we get some nice summers. Right, and the last one, this is you know, there's never a question mark on this one. This is a needle palm, very small needle palm. What can we say? It's one of the hardest palms in the world. Not going to be phased by winter. Again, it's going to be the summer that lets it down, because we just don't get hot enough summers to get decent growth out of them. So they're going to be another very slow growing palm. So that's the whole point here. It's quite a small little island area. It's going to take years for this to look anything of note, but I know what they are, and I enjoy the fact that I've got some unusual palms growing. Right, so that's a look at the palms. Again, we're not out of the danger zone yet. I don't think we're going to see any spear pulls this year, as it's not been cold enough. In general, I'm very happy with how things have turned out as regard to, you know, the hardiness levels of these palms, and you know, exactly what I expected. I didn't really expect the Kenta palm to survive, but again, we don't know yet. That we will jury's out on that one. We'll see in another month or so if it start pushing growth. Right, so let's finish up on, again, the palm that started it all for me. So this is the Phoenix canariensis, and bearing in mind we had a really bad winter previous to this one. This one's been mild, but you know, we had some damage, and I'll tell you the growth rate on this, because this is really blowing my mind. So this frond was a new one last year, because I know that because I cut the end off because it got frosted off, and that sort of, the end died, so I had to cut that off. So that's the point. That was the centre spear this time last year. So basically everything in the centre from that was from last year, and we know it weren't a good summer last year, and yet this really has pumped out a ridiculous amount of fronds. And again, so this does fit into the video, because a lot of people say, oh, you know, they won't last. And be honest, you know, I've got a dog, I walk the dog, and we're always going different routes, and I've seen a lot of these lately, new ones that I've never discovered before around my local area, a lot bigger than this. So I'm not saying they're going to be hardy forever, but we've got some specimens roundabout in my local area town which must have been there 20 years plus. I mean, this has been here 10 years from a very small plant. So, you know, we've got specimens that have survived the 2010 winter, the beast from the east in 2018, and last year as well. So it does depend on location, and that is, I'll be confident to say this is going to survive for a good few years as yet. Right, so thanks for watching. Like and subscribe if you like palms and other tropical plants, and we'll catch you on the next one.